Hi folks, I'm Pierce Fraser, and I'm here to show you a little bit about miniatures that you're currently funding. Because a lot of people have not seen a 3D printed miniature before, might have concerns about quality, or want to know how they stack up against the miniatures they're used to seeing, or things of that nature. All very good questions. So I thought I'd point out a few things compared to some common bases that you've probably seen before if you've been in the tabletop scene in the past. So here we have an old friend to many, I'm sure. This is an Eldar Ranger from Games Workshop's Warhammer 40,000 line. This one is cast in what they call fine cast, which is kind of a resin plastic hybrid. It's very easy to cut and work with. Doesn't really stand up to heat very well. Paint's reasonably easy and has a variable relationship with glue, we might say. Sometimes good and sometimes bad. All in all, a pretty decent quality figure, or pretty decent quality material to work with. And the figure is gorgeous, right? Lots of detail in there and stuff. To show you where we have for sizes, I'm going to drop down. Here we go. This is one of our prize figures, reward figures for various stages of donations. This is the Cinderland figure, which is a Doberman. Right? You can see height-wise, she is standing up versus the somewhat slouched figure of the Ranger that's over here. So the height is a little bit taller than the one over here. You got a pointed helmet here showing additional height. But if you were to straighten these legs out, you'd have a vaguely identical set. This figure is also on a slightly larger base than this one is in terms of its overall height. So in the end, they match up pretty much exact in terms of their overall height on the battlefield. You got somebody standing up a bit straighter here versus the slouched figure, spread-legged figure that's over here. So she matches up to, say, a guardsman or an Eldar character, a little less than a Space Marine in terms of overall height. This figure was 3D printed. Move it up a little bit here so you can see a little better. There we go. It was painted using acrylics, mix of Games Workshop products, and a few other different acrylic paint providers. There were also washes on this figure to help do some of the low areas. There we go. By comparison, we have the Faerin figure, which is a much larger figure in the same scale. Bring her over here next to the other two, so you can get an idea of overall positioning there. So this figure is Tarek. Base is twice as large as the previous one. Right, but you can see that it still scales very nicely with the other two, so you just had to have a larger person as opposed to somebody who's been unnaturally inflated in some way. This figure also painted with various acrylics and washes. So some stuff on the 3D printing. Those of you who have worked with older 3D printers or 3D printers that are dealing with larger objects might be familiar with this stepping sensation that kind of pops in between each of the different layers of the 3D print. That's not something you have to worry about on these figures. I'll try to get as close as my little camera will allow so that you can see how nice we can get on the detail there, right? It's not showing up at all. This figure over here, in order to save on costs, so this is one of the test figures that we worked with, the figure itself was printed using the high-quality plastics. And you can see that that stepping is not present on the face or the hair, but you are seeing a little bit of it on the base that she's standing on, and that's because that base was printed actually using a lower resolution and a lower quality plastic just to save on some costs for that particular model. That was done over there. So here's the tail, and you can see that it is totally smooth. Right, very cool. The materials for these, when we first started printing the 3D printed miniatures that we were testing out for these, the Faerin model there was printed on a clear plastic that was done through Shapeways. And it was discovered that that clear plastic was a little bit more expensive than we wanted to spend with, and it had some not great qualities when it was mixed with things like oil washes. Had a tendency to dissolve, not a great situation there. But thankfully, a newer plastic opened up that not only had the same level of resolution, but it didn't have that issue with oils. And you can see that washes were used on both these figures. This figure, rather, specifically, which was printed in the new plastic, as opposed to this figure in the old plastic, because washes are a popular thing with miniature painting. We want to make sure that all that stuff works nicely. So the ones that you receive through this Kickstarter are actually resin casts of these 3D prints. for the your reward tiers, and that was purely to make them more affordable for returns, because the cost of investment on this particular project is so large that if I'm having to spend $20 printing each individual model for reward, plus another $10 shipping, plus losing half the reward in terms of fees and taxes and all the other things that Kickstarter pulls out, it would cost a huge amount of money, about 3 times as much as is currently written down, just to get this line started. And we didn't want to do that because it just wasn't realistic. So you'll be getting these really pretty resin casts, a bit more like this, right? Closer to this feel and stuff, and totally totally paintable, totally primable, and nice high quality, very sharp lines, close to the stuff that you're seeing there. For the actual product, the thing that will be done when this Kickstarter is finished, that you would be ordering from Imagine 3D Miniatures, that's being funded, those will be 3D printed. So you'll be getting things more like this, not painted, of course. The painting is for you guys to do in whatever colors you want to do, but the model itself will be a 3D print and it's delivered to your door. And these guys are on bases that were also 3D printed. And that was just to give them something to stand on so that we could practice around with stuff like that. But in terms of 3D print, every piece of material is more cost to you. And the only advantage of a base is that most things are round, but not everything is going to be. Those of you who are using these in fantasy settings might want to put square bases on them. D&D settings might want to put square bases on them if they want to fit their grid. Their grid exactly. HSD settings will probably want to put hex bases on them. So the figures that you'll be ordering from us when this Kickstarter is complete will actually be cut off right below the foot there, right? So of course you'll get the whole foot, you'll get the whole foot, you'll get the whole stone, all that stuff, but this base won't be attached. And you can put it on whatever base you want to put it on. So you're not paying for that extra bit of 3D printing, because that is a considerable amount of material down there to actually print. Even over here, you're looking at something that's, the size of her entire lower body and pretty thick, and this one's even hollowed to save on that. By removing that, saves on cost to you, saves on cost for other aspects of the project, then gives you the opportunity to put on whatever base you want to put on. If you want to put on Games Workshop style rounds or squares or hexes like HSD uses, or anything else that you want to put on. So those are them. I'll give you a quick little turnaround here so you can see some more details. And there's your first look. Hope to see you more as the campaign continues.